Good afternoon and welcome to the 7th episode of Aico TV. I'm Alex Garmston.
And I'm Holly Moore.
And today we're filming from Ember Place here in Aico, Oswestry. Ember Place is our bespoke bungalow consisting of 3 rooms, which we'll show you a little later, and is part of our flexible meeting room that sits up to 40 people. Today we have an action-packed episode for you, and here's what's coming up. Firstly, we have our Regional Specification Manager, Andy Sturgess, talking to Dave from Sparky Ninja.
Next, our National Account Manager, Paul Cartwright, speaks to the Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue Service.
Then we have our other Regional Specification Manager, Dan Thomas, talking to the MS Society.
And lastly, our Technical Advisor, Indra, will be answering this week's FAQ, how to remove your Aico alarm from its base.
Recently, our Regional Specification Manager, Andy Sturgess, had the pleasure of interviewing Dave from Sparky Ninja. Sparky Ninja are a YouTube sensation that focus on supporting the electrical industry regarding training, making sure it's the best it can be. For those of you who have not seen one of their episodes on YouTube, please go and have a look. But for now, let's look at Andy Sturgess interviewing Dave.
Hi, I'm Andy from Aico. We are here today to have a bit of a chat with Dave Watts from Sparky Ninja. Going to be talking at different elements in regards to general fire safety in properties when it comes to electrical installations. So you might have seen his YouTube channel over the last few years, but I'll give you a little bit of an introduction to him. He's a third generation electrician, former QS and ops manager for a London-based contractor, been in the training sector for about 10 years or so. And he is on a mission to improve the standards of electrical training, because in some cases it's great, and in some cases we know it really isn't the best. He is a founder member of the E5 group and the proprietor of Sparky Ninja, so that's where you probably know him from. And the key here is working to successfully support and educate electricians and learners and inform them of the future of the electrical industry. He's also a consultant and tends to specialise in the development of safe electrical working practices and thermal imaging surveys. We've also got with us today Carl Traynor, who is an RSM working for Aico, but don't think of him like that. He is a time-served Spark. Started off working for Liverpool City Council, been Spark for 31 years, haven't you, Carl? Are you still a Spark now, or do you just pretend to be a Spark?
Officially, I'm not a Spark anymore. I'm told by my line manager I am not a Spark anymore.
Oh, no. But yeah, worked in the social and private sector. He was an electrical manager in all manners of different social housing for the last 11 years. And he sits on the electrical safety roundtable and helped write the code of practice. So
Yeah, a little bit.
what we're going to do today is move on to our first subject before I let these two loose with their conversation. And today is in regards to 7671, more specifically 560.10, or is it 560.10 or 560.10?
560.10 or if you're really sad, page 227.
Oh, sorry. And as we know there, you've got a section there in relation to the fire and fire detection systems in dwellings, basically saying that the installation should comply with all relevant parts of BS 5839. It doesn't specifically say part 6, it just says the 5839 document. And the key question here is when it does come to EICRs, when it comes to your reports, is it a code or is it just an observation? What would you say you want to be doing in regards to that section of the document? So I don't know if Dave wants to start or if Carl wants to start, put your thoughts on the matter.
I've got my book in front of me like normal. Okay, let me just read it specifically. So fire detection and fire alarm systems shall comply with the relevant parts of the 5839 series.
Yeah.
So from my interpretation, that's not really a maybe I will, maybe I won't.
Yeah, you will do it. Yeah.
You shall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the onus is then on the inspector to decide, am I now competent within the 5839 series suite, 6 for domestic, 1 for everything else? Do I seek some other evidence that has been maintained effectively for me to determine there's no potential danger with that? Because if it's not maintained effectively, then there's got to be a codable observation.
Good. Interesting take on it. I've always looked at it in the past when I used to do the EICRs. If it's a new installation, if you're doing a rewire or an upgrade, I'm talking with my electrical head on here, then that reg obviously comes into play. There's no two ways about it. If you're doing installation cert and you don't follow that regulation, you would have to put that down as a deviation, is my take on it. I think a lot of the discussions that I have, both as Aico and still as electrical, come around the ICRs. There's what you do there, So looking at it in the past, what I've done is I've had it down as an observation. So I used to have a list of C1, C2, C3s, and then at the bottom I used to have about half a dozen observations, and it was stuff that sort of sat outside 7671, but was still worthy of note. An ICR is different to doing a rewire or an upgrade. So you could, you're reporting on what is actually already there. So there's definitely a discussion to be had over, like you say, whether it is a code. I mean, obviously, if the smoke alarm, say for instance, is broken or damaged, then it could be a C1 or a C2, access to live parts, that type of thing. But if there's no smoke alarms installed, or let's say it's an LD3 system that's in Hall and Landon, which obviously an awful lot of properties have still got. Now it should be LD2, obviously, with the new revised standard. It's not a C1 because it's not. No. It's going to kill you when you touch it. Where do you argue is a C2 a C3? My take was always it's an observation. It kind of sits outside those codes, but I don't know what do you think, Dave? Would you take it?
I've said very, very many times the coding is very restrictive. It doesn't give electricians many options, and often the codes, because of the outcome of the codes, determines their opinions on those codes, which sometimes is a problem. Yeah, a big problem. If I'm on an EICR tomorrow, I've got to consider the current utilization of the installation, the future utilization, because the point of my inspection is to make sure it's suitable for continued use. And if there has been an update, I mean, we've known there's been a couple of recent amendments to 5839 and 6. I then look at the outcome of those updates. I mean, is the outcome a potential danger consideration? Has there been a change in utilization that would warrant now potential danger? I really don't see it. I see it as maybe improvement recommended most of the time. But it might be, for example, the owners changed the occupancy, changed the utilization of a property, or added a dedicated escape route, or changed something, which may then put a potential danger in situ in an event. But this is down to me understanding what the requirements of 5839 are, and then interpreting that to how this would actually work in the workplace or in multiple occupancies. I can see it. To me, it's definitely a codable thing because it's a shall. It's a record. The word there is shall, like with the others. So I can't choose to go, oh, it's outside the reach of 7671. It just means there's more technical content elsewhere, and I shall go and get that information to comply with 7671. I can't ignore that. I think majority of times it's going to most likely be a C3 unless I see something that's evident that there's a change in use, a change in external influences, that an event of a fire would be, needs a heavy upgrade to comply with the current version of 5839.
I think on premises like that, I mean, if we're still talking, let's for argument's sake, about social housing, that for me, thinking would be, like you say, you'd look at the property, you'd look at the tenants, which is very important as well. I'd like to think that if it was a tenant who was, say, infirm, or that maybe needed a winch to get out of a chair or something like that, there would be a specific FRA have been done for that property. You would then,
and you want to read that
for that kind of thing. I think a lot of the questions I get asked, obviously I deal with an awful lot of electrical managers on my patch. I know a lot from my previous life. And it is a case of, well, if we're just going in and doing an ICR and we're just reporting on what is there, and it's a sort of standard property with standard occupancy, with nothing untoward, where does it sit? Like you say, if you're doing a rewire or any upgrade or installation work, for me, you have no choice. That reg is there, 560.10. You have to follow that. So you would have to put an LD2 system in, for argument's sake, in the absence of an FRA. That's what you would be doing if you're doing a rewire. If you don't, then you're going to have to deviate. As we know, yeah, you can deviate from the regs, but you have
You
to
can, but you're going to have
reason for doing it.
deviations.
You have to specify that on the
deviations aren't a pick and mix. You can't choose which ones you don't want to work with. You're going to have
the kind of the blanket statement in 539. I mean, it's more the fact that it says where practicable, get fire risk assessment. But when do you, as the installer, deem that as practicable?
I've probably had a dozen in my lifetime of work, and a lot of the time the fire risk assessments is, for instances, what we've just talked about. Whenever I do training, I quite often refer to a property I had to manage when I worked over at Wigan, and it was 2 properties where they'd knocked through into one, so they turned into a 6-bedroom house. And because of the children in that property, there was autism present. We were given a fire risk assessment for that, and we put alarms right through. So we had to get a phase taken out first because the 2 houses were on different phases. Yeah. We rewired it to suit, so they had a massive kitchen and a massive dining area, but we put alarms right throughout the property, and that's going back 11, 12 years ago probably. That we were given an FRA for it, but generally working, you don't often get them, very rarely get them.
But it's one of those things, isn't it?
Yeah, really sorry. My general observations, because I see many EICRs, is a lot of electricians don't have that detailed understanding of 5839.
Yeah.
And so they'll see that maybe the smoke alarms are out of date. Maybe there's no battery. Maybe they're not mains or interlinked, and that's about where they go. Or they've purchased the electrician's guide book, and they only go with the information that's in there, and that doesn't get updated as regularly. Putting my training hat on a moment, I then look at what we do with the 2391 or the equivalent qualifications for inspection and testing in EICRs. And there's a lot in that focuses on 7671, but it stays bound in 7671. What I'd like us to think about doing at some point is expanding some of that training to also require technical understanding on those other standards that are within the reach of 7671, such as 5266, such as 5839, such as 8519 if relevant. Because for me to be a competent inspector, I have to have that detailed technical information. I can't just ignore it because I haven't read the standard. But this just shows where the training really also needs to improve for the standard of inspectors to understand what to do to comply with 7671. To say 560.10 is a shall regulation. And for us to be competent to do an EICR, we should have a detailed technical understanding of 5839. So
happy days. But I think it's one of those situations where, based on the wording, the word shall in there. I mean, as Carl's already mentioned, it's a case of on installation, it should always be done.
You've no choice on that to me. If you're issuing an installation certificate, then you have to follow. You're installing to the current version of the regs. Yeah. That is the current version of the regs. So there you go. The EICR, as we know, I always say you shouldn't. Again, it's debate. People do different things on EICRs. People will put C1s on, even though they fixed them, because you would never walk away from a C1. You just wouldn't. You wouldn't do it. Sometimes people get confused though because they see C1s and they think there's still something there. So it depends. People write them differently, and I'm sure you've seen them, Dave. You could put in brackets rectified, but people don't necessarily see that word. They just see C1 and panic immediately, and that's what they look at. So EICRs is, like I say, it's slightly different. You're talking about something that is already there. So, and again, I suppose in some ways it'd be client sort of based what you want to do. We're going out and do EICRs. Are you in the background building works? How far do you go on them? A lot of places that I've worked in the past have said, we want a clean certificate. And you're just like, well, first it's not a certificate, it's a report. But I'm being pedantic there, but okay. Yeah. But you probably won't ever get one because there'll be some C3s there that you just generally, you'll always have them. You'll always have a few on there. Yeah. What's your budget? If you've got an unlimited budget, then I can clear all your C3s off, but it's fine to put through with a couple of C3s on, and then you can debate later on if you want to address them at some point. But where'd you go? When you're doing an EICR, right, okay, well, do you now want me to put an extra 2 alarms in while I'm there? And that's then going to affect your program. Where I used to work, we were building a program in the background. So if we went in, there was only 2 alarms in, we would note it on the certificate, slipped up there, on the report. We would note it on the report. But then we would then go in the background, and it was basically because of programming. If I used to generally have each of my electricians with an EICR in the morning, one in the afternoon, but with some empty slots for spare capacity, because you never know what you're walking into.
No.
You can be there all day, you can be there into a second day, so we'd have a little bit of mix and match. But if you've then got an entire team also installing smoke alarms as well, unless you're using the RF, which obviously cuts down some time, it depends on your program, where you're up to with it. So what you list on that. I mean, you just made the good point there, Dave, about it, 5266, that's another one, emergency lighting. I know we're coming on to that shortly, but there's a few little things that, again, talking to a lot of electrical managers, just like, well, where do we sit with this? Is it a C3? It's not really a C2. Is it an observation? I say, so I have a lot of observations. It's fine to put stuff on the report. The more you put on, that's fine. You've been asked to provide information, so provide that information.
Yeah, and the key thing with the information is the education that the client gets with that information. Exactly. If you just give them, I mean, a certificate would just be a valid date, pass, fail, and that's what a lot of the landlords now are being. This is the mindset. But if we have inspectors think about the right way to put the information on, and then talking to the client when handing over that information, then they can obviously be kind of educated at the same time. You've given a little bit of a risk assessment approach as to how to properly strategize improving these over time. I mean, you say about the idea of putting in alarms as you're doing inspections. When you think about reasonably practicable, it's harder to argue the case if it's not reasonably practicable if you've got skilled persons on site already carrying out an EICR who can, with a little bit of effort, just add some alarms into a property.
Well, it's the fundamentals as well, is the fact that it's not a recommendation just for the sake of it. There's a reasoning behind it. Like that level is there as the minimum level to protect life in the dwelling. So what I find a lot of time the discussion is, it fundamentally will come down to cost, for example. But in reality, when you actually explain to them why that system needs to go in, why the British Standard recommends it, the reason, all the fundamentals behind it, you either get people go, actually, that's a good point, let's do it. Or you get the ones who sit there and go, so do I have to do it, or
do I have to?
Do I have to? And you sit there going, well, you don't have to do it, but you should do it, which is the big differentiation. But obviously, when you've got a code on a report, would you feel as electricians, say for example, if you knew the client wouldn't want to do it purely on a cost base, would you think, well, actually, I'm going to put this down as a code because I think as the installer on site, it should be in the property?
If I was doing an inspection and I found if I suspected any kind of negligence on behalf of a landlord or an occupier, I would consider the owner. I would always consider the health and safety and the risks to the occupiers. And if I felt that there was any negligence on behalf of their duties as landlords, etc., I would let that translate to my coding, because I would try to drive my EICR to actually improve the livelihoods and safety of the persons occupying the property. There's no point in me giving a piece of safe paperwork to a guy in an office who's miles away. If the person's in that property utilizing that electrical installation are not safe, then my objective has not been fulfilled.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you see a lot of Sparks who unfortunately take the mindset of, we'll just churn through reports.
Yeah, minimums.
We'll get them done, get them out the door, they'll pay us, stamp, see you later. When in reality, it shouldn't be a case of passing the report, it should be considering the safety of the person living in.
Unfortunately, you also have people who are afraid to have that discussion, because sometimes when you hand the first few reports in and there's a big long list of C2s and C3s, it becomes an awkward conversation.
I did a school EICR a couple of years ago, and it was subcontracting. And the main qualifying supervisor of the main contractor questioned my code because I put C2s for sockets with no RCDs. And also we have the current exclusion with the ability to assess risk. Now, when I was at the school, there was no risk assessments evident. And these sockets are actually positioned on sinks, which were for kids in the nursery. So there were sinks that kids played with. Yeah. And you could consider, well, maybe there's skilled persons observing. And I think, well, no, there's one teacher for 30 boys and girls. And I've got kids myself. And if I was to have my kids playing in that area, I would just not be happy at all. So I put C2. This guy said, no, it's a C3. Then he sent me all these little best practice guys and all these things. I said, no. I'm in this school. It's my name on this report. I can see kids using equipment, and the kind of equipment was fairly okay. It was all like silver equipment, it was these little things that go in the water and blow bubbles and do these little activities. But the sockets were probably about 30 centimeters from the edge of these water play areas.
Yeah.
And they needed to be RCD protected or ideally removed. But they just wanted to C3 pass it on. And I just stood firm. And it took about 4 or 5 emails. They even tried to get the CPS involved, but they knew it was me. They went, no, just they just went in, they knew who was on the end of this report. They just went, no, because he'll just argue, just leave it. And they kind of conceded to do C2 in that situation. And we can drive that. We can look at engineering judgment. We can assess risk. And if we're not able to do that, we've got to find ways to improve our own ability to do that. We can't just rely on what a book says to make our decisions for us.
You're there on site. I had a similar discussion at some point, and it was sort of along those lines. And I had a specific code amongst my codes, and it was a C2. And what it was for was light and wide and singles. So we had a couple of states where I was working at the time, where they'd been wired in sort of late 70s, early 80s. That was when they used to do a lot of lighting circuits in singles, and it was single earths. So not double sheet, just a single little 1 mil earth. And the amount of continuity faults we used to find on the lighting circuits, particularly upstairs, because obviously that's all run through the lofts. And what do people do with the lofts? Well, you throw the Christmas tree in the suitcases and all kinds of things up there. And we had an extraordinary percentage of earth continuity faults on those estates compared to elsewhere in the borough. So when we looked at it and we came to these, we were looking at upgrading, and we were recommending rewires on a lot of them for other reasons as well. But we got into a discussion at one point. What they're saying is it's not a C2, it's a C3. And when we've looked at it, we have risk assessed it. We have taken our own engineering judgments of my 17 electricians and their history working here for, between them all, there's hundreds of years of experience. And we can prove that there's an extraordinary number of faults on these specific estates that are wired in this specific way. Therefore, we're deeming it as a C2 because of the continuity faults. That's where we went. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That situation like you just described, to me, that's a C2 all day. Why would you not have stuff that's RCD protected where kids are involved anyway? And you say to a kid, don't splash water on that socket. What are they going to do? That's like when my mum used to be the cleaner at the bookies and told me when I used to give her a hand, don't press that big red
don't press that button.
What did Carl do after a couple of weeks?
It's the alarm button underneath.
Yeah. She never did forgive me for that one.
for some reason.
Yeah, the armed police turned up and there's Peggy with a Mr. Sheen going, I don't know what's happening. So. Well, yeah, it's right though, isn't it? That's your risk assessment, and that's how we dealt with it. Me and all my Sparks stood firm on it and said, no, we can prove that this is a bigger problem here. Maybe in other places it isn't, but here it is. We've got the background for it and we've got the experience for it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, happy days. Oh, well, that was a pretty concise answer to that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's one of those situations I feel where it is going to be down to the installer. They're the ones making the decision, but a lot of the time, as we're aware, you need the education. And you need to understand the fundamentals of what it is you're looking at rather than just thinking, oh, well, it must do.
And as Dave's pointed out, the certificates and reports as well on the client side, and that's no disrespect to anyone. Again, in the past, I've been told, we've got, I think it was something like 2,000 unsatisfactory reports. We can't have it. There's no way. I know we've got and the rewires, but we haven't got that many. And it was just simply, they were looking at installation certificates, and because they didn't see satisfactory on it, they assumed it was unsatisfactory. And again, it was just that little bit of education of, no, this is a different type of certificate that we issue, and it doesn't actually have that on it. If you see one of them, it's okay. It's like for a rewire, you need to read this bit. And it's just people interpreting. To us as Sparks, to be fair, we know that. We just look at them, we know instinctively without. But for somebody else who's trying to file these and audit them and don't know, it creates a lot of problems. I know I nearly had a heart attack when I was told at the time. But yeah, it is just down to education.
So the question was about 56010, and I've been pretty firm to say yes, we shall, and it's within that. Yeah. So playing devil's advocate now, a lot of electricians would be like, well, that's too expensive. So what ways do electricians have to access the information of 5839, or because we always hear about the costs of these standards. I mean, 7671, you get so much for your money in that. So I mean, guys like yourselves, you provide a good bit of guidance information on the 5839 requirements, don't you?
Yeah, well, I think you sat for one of my glorious training.
One of your
sessions, didn't you?
glorious going on the journey in your PowerPoints. Yes, we did. Yes.
So yes, obviously we offer our expert installer training, which will cover all your British standards, all your best practice. It'll basically, cover, I wouldn't say everything, because obviously there are the intricacies and there's the small print that you obviously should always you should know it. Obviously we'll do the training for you, but you should always back it up yourselves with your own research. But we'll cover the main stuff that you need to know, your day to day, what you're going to run into 99% of the time. Yeah, we do our expert installer training course, which if you want to get involved with that, just go on our website and register for it. And then when we're doing one either online or in the area,
I really recommend electricians to do it to see what is in 5839. And I think with a little bit of just extra reading up, they'll probably just go and. I mean, I've again in my own little Discord server and places, there's some lads in there that are actually spending a good bit of money on standards now, but they're using them. Yeah, that's the key. They're actually using these in their reports, in their designs and stuff. They're not just getting all of them. They're getting the ones that are very unique.
You refer to it, yeah. I mean, we do the handy books as well. I used to love the handy books when I was still on the tools. Yeah. And then obviously managing people afterwards, and then we give them out free as well. But
and the app's very good.
Yeah, you can download the handy book now as an app. You just literally get it on your phone for free. So it's all the information's there. But I think, as Andy says, that I've found it quite interesting. I've been doing this job coming up on 2 years now. Surprisingly, I've lasted that long, really, to be honest with you. Yeah, I know.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I've done well, haven't I, really? But yeah, I have found it interesting doing the training as to the different levels. And again, that's no disrespect to anyone whatsoever. But I think in social housing, a lot of the time, you get people in to train. I think you touched on it before, Dave. I used to I'd have people that come in from environments and talk about damp and mould and stuff. Other manufacturers coming in, we'd talk about surge protection, things like that. And my predecessor used to come in and talk about smoke alarms and that. But unless you're in that specific environment, what I found when I'm doing training is that other lads and girls haven't been. And it's when you start talking about stuff like ionisation alarms, the amount of people still fitting ionisation. And personally, I haven't put one of them up in about 14 years or something like that.
You found your stash, didn't you, the other day?
I did. I found my old stash. Yeah, I found my old stash the other day. Haven't been used. Brand new alarms from 1999. But and that's what I tend to find. And then when we do the training on like the mobile units or whatever it is, and they start asking questions, you're like, right, okay, well, we'll go through this. But there's loads of different levels. But yeah, like I say, just researching like the handy books coming. Well, handy. The clue is in the title, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing as well is because we do a lot of training, and the main thing that I find is you do the training, and 99% of the sparks go away and go and use it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is just them not knowing about it in the first place and not realising they need to know about it.
You get the phone calls afterwards. Yeah. I get a few of them a couple of weeks later. Yeah, I've had a few of them. I remember one guy ringing me up and saying, "Hey mate," he said, "you told us to do that LD2." I went, Yeah. He went, "Well, I'm on this house here." He said, "It's a new build." He said, "It's only about 2 years old, and they've converted the loft into a bedroom." He said, "So obviously I was putting an alarm up there." He said, "But the guy from the council told me to put it in all the bedrooms underneath it." He went, "That's not LD2, that's not what you said to do." Yeah. And I went, "What was the very first thing I told you to look at if you've got one?" I went, "So the guy from the council, as by chance he'd done a fire risk assessment," he went, "Oh, yeah, I remember that now." You're just like, "Oh, there you go then." But yeah, you do, it is kind of cool when you get a few calls later on, or you see someone and they're like, "Hey, yeah, put a CO alarm in," and a couple of months later the thing went off, it is good. But the key is education on all kinds.
Happy days. And then speaking of education, do you want to do a shameless plug, Dave, in regards to Sparky Ninja?
Yeah, okay. I'm currently delivering 80th edition training on a monthly basis, virtually, online. We're hoping, obviously, to start going back into the classroom around. I've had an awful lot of people do training with me that have got such a lot of confidence and trust in the way I've trained it, that they're queuing up for me to deliver the 2391s and the other courses. So I'm in the middle right now of trying to get a team together, because I can't do it all by myself, because I can't quality assure myself and internally verify myself. So I'm trying to get some good guys together to kind of partner up with to do my internal quality assurance and stuff. So I'm looking to launch Sparky Ninja as a City and Guild accredited centre in the next few months. But for now, I'm delivering training in the space of SparkyNinja.com. I'm doing all sorts of stuff. Just look on social media. You'll see what I get up to.
Happy days.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for joining us today, Dave.
Awesome,
And,
guys. Thank you for the chat. It's really good.
Brilliant. And we will catch you to talk about something else in the near future.
See you later.
Cheers, guys.
See ya.
It was great to hear from our Regional Specification Manager, Andy Sturgess there, joined by another colleague, Carl Traynor, talking to Dave from Sparky Ninja. Really interesting session. This session is going to be one of 4. So hopefully next week we'll see some more of that and find out how they're getting on. But next, let's move to a short break. We'll see you after that.
Welcome back. I'm still here at Ember Place. So in the kitchen here, we use this for training for fire hazard and safety sessions. You might see that we've planted a few fire hazards around. So we've got the iron here, and there's the tea towel at the back if you've not spotted it already. But we'll move on to our next segment, which is our National Account Manager, Paul Cartwright, speaking to the Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue Service about the CPD training that they scout out for their employees and how we help them by offering our CPD training.
Hello, I'm Paul Cartwright, National Account Manager at Aico, and I've got the pleasure of being joined today by Kevin Gutherson and Lucy Cowell from Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue Service. We're going to have a chat today about their roles within the business, within the fire service, and obviously it makes sense that, you know, from Aico's perspective, we manufacture smoke alarms. We have a lot of contact with social housing and the fire service with regards to what we do. So a better understanding of their roles within the fire service and where the fire service fit with in terms of enforcement, protection and prevention, just for a bit more knowledge for everyone else out there. Hi Lucy.
Hi Paul, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you again. We have met a couple of times online. First time today for Kevin as well.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I think first thing we can do is just understand, you know, what your position is within the fire service and what your role entails. Lucy, if you want to.
Right, so I've worked with Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue for almost 3 years, not quite. Come from a totally different background, so I've been on a huge learning curve really, but I am officially now a fire safety inspector, and I go out and audit premises. Have been getting involved with a lot of other projects as well within the department, CPD being one of the key topics and what a lot of people, how a lot of people know me personally.
What does your week normally, how's your week work normally on a day-to-day basis?
It can vary greatly, so I could be taking calls from members of the public where they're making inquiries from businesses from that side of things. I carry out fire safety inspections or audits, as we refer to them, on commercial premises, or it could be a care home, residential buildings is something that some of my colleagues do. I've not been too involved in that at the moment. I also do a lot of work within, we have a projects team, policy enforcement and training team, and part of my role within that is looking for CPD for the department and sharing that with the wider fire and rescue service and also with external fire safety professionals to promote good practice and promote competency and make people aware of what is available out there.
We'll talk some more about that in a little while, I think. It's obviously really interesting to us as well. We do a lot with regards to training, so I think it's interesting to hear what you're doing with CPD as well, so I think we'll talk some more about that.
Lovely.
Kevin, in terms of your role within the fire service?
So currently I am a station commander in the fire protection department, working as a fire safety manager So I look after the policy enforcement and training team, and I look after one of our district areas for fire safety. So there's a team.
How big's the district?
So it's Watford and Three Rivers district. So it's quite a built up area. It's probably the most built up area of Hertfordshire.
Right, so it's
Yeah, right on the border of London.
fair old size then.
Yeah.
And you've been with the fire service a number of years?
I have. I joined as a retained firefighter in a small rural community in Northumberland, and in 2004 transferred to Hertfordshire, and I've worked in several departments, but for the last 9 years now I've been in the fire protection team.
Right.
Yeah.
So what does the fire protection team, what's their role?
So our main role is to assist business in being compliant with fire safety legislation, helping keeping people safe, prevent fires occurring, and when a fire does occur, make sure the premises is safe enough for people to be able to evacuate safely.
Right. So important work then.
I would like to think so, yeah.
How have you had to prioritise at all during this last year because of COVID?
Absolutely. We have had to make sure that we keep our own staff safe, so we have still been visiting premises, but on a need-to basis only. So we have done some like tabletop audits, so we would look at the risk assessments, look at training records, testing and maintenance records. If we're happy that those are all right, the chances are that the premises is reasonably safe. If it's got a good quality risk assessment and we can see that any significant findings of that risk assessment have been actioned, the chances are that premises is safe. So we've only been visiting premises when it's been absolutely necessary.
Right. Have there been many changes this last month or so? Do you foresee getting out a lot more?
Yes, you know, as the lockdown conditions ease, we will start to return to a more normal way of working. Obviously, we have to risk assess that as well, because we have to keep both members of the public safe and our team.
Much as we're seeing in the commercial sector, I think we're seeing businesses starting to get back. It's just a slow process.
Yeah, absolutely.
The work we do with social housing, it's been very clear that there's been certain programmes what can continue to be done. So the work they do within void properties, within empty properties, they can carry on doing that work, but the standard sort of upgrade programs they've been doing have been more difficult, gaining access to, you know, when people are living in the properties, in a lot of cases shielding. It's been a lot more difficult, and I would assume it'd be the same for the prevention team as well, Lucy. I mean, do you know much about what falls within their sort of purview in regards to prevention?
I'm not really that.
We are two departments that work on very similar stuff, but we tend not to mix, because our side of the equation is commercial or business premises. Prevention is more about domestic, and it's about education rather than compliance.
Absolutely. We're trying to do what we can to support that as well, but in terms of protection side, we do, in terms of regulatory reform order, I mean, it's been out a number of years now. Do you still come across businesses that haven't got a fire risk assessment?
Absolutely. Well, or we come across a lot of businesses that have had a risk assessment done, and it's been sent to them by the risk assessor and has never been out of the envelope. So they haven't actioned any of the significant findings from that risk assessment. Yes. And of course, having the piece of paper isn't good enough. You know, you must have actioned it. Yeah. You must understand it as a responsible person as well. You know.
Absolutely. I mean, do you do any inspections on the sort of residential, the commercial aspects of residential properties as well, such as the, you know, the hallways and landings in?
So houses in multiple occupation, we quite often will inspect, but in conjunction with our local authority colleagues who manage those under the Housing Act. So more often than not, the Housing Act takes precedence for that, but we will act as an advisor to environmental health or housing officers who manage that.
That's interesting to say. We've had a lot of conversations over the years with social housing with regards to the Housing Act. Yeah. I don't know if you're aware, but there's now been the Homes Fit for Human Habitation legislation, what's basically gone through Parliament, and that's being enforced now as well. So that should help that that next step in terms of, you know, making sure these properties are fit for human habitation, but then obviously that carries through to the communal areas as well. We just don't, from my own perspective and my experience, I've not seen that much inspections of the work what's been done in terms of fire risk assessments in communal areas of properties. No. Because it's not necessarily high on the priority list, it's more the commercial buildings.
And more often than not, the communal areas in housing are sterile areas. Absolutely, so they are maintained sterile. There aren't really much in the way of combustible materials there, and obviously limited sources of ignition. Yeah.
I can only imagine doing a risk assessment on those types of properties is problematic anyway, because on the day the risk assessment's been done, that everything is sterile and perfect, and the following day someone's decided to dispose of a settee in the downstairs hallway, but that's after the risk assessment's been done, so it must be difficult for the risk assessors.
It is. And not everybody wants to give the risk assessor access to the areas of the building, you know. Quite often there are roof spaces that haven't been inspected, or basements, because the risk assessor hasn't been able to access those areas.
So I think in terms of education, you know, for the landlords and for the fire risk assessors, it's very important, and that comes back to what you were saying before about the CPD element of your work as well.
Yes, very much so. So probably about 18 months ago, I was asked if I would take a little bit of a lead on the CPD within our own fire protection team in Hertfordshire, and competency obviously is key for all of us, everybody in the fire industry, to be honest. But for us as fire safety auditors, we have a competency framework that we have to adhere to, and part of that is to maintain our CPD, which is a minimum, as a rough guide, a minimum of 25 hours a year. But that is a minimum, so we don't need to stick to that. That's the baseline. So I started to put together a CPD email with any events that I came across, reading materials, current reading materials, what's going on in the news, because I think it's important that we're all aware of what the issues are, as well as, you know, keeping up to date with legislation, new products, guidance that's out there, British standards. It's ongoing all the time, and an ever-changing world, particularly at the moment. So I do a CPD email once a week, but this now goes out to many services across the UK, Scotland. We've even got a colleague in Cyprus that receives it, so international as well. And off the back of that, we come up with the idea that maybe actually, you know, we should all be pulling the same way. So the CPD email now goes out to many different fire professionals within the industry, many different fire professionals, and it's been really, really well received. So, and it is about maintaining competency, people knowing their subject, also knowing their limitations. I myself have only been in, as I said earlier, in the fire and rescue service for less than 3 years. I have I've just completed my level 4 diploma in fire safety. But I am very aware that it's not just about gaining a qualification, it's about having that experience as well, and they go hand in hand, and I think that's something for us all, you know, all to remember, for fire risk assessors to remember, for fire safety managers. Don't be afraid to seek advice and seek support. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, from my perspective, you know, being on the circulation list now, you know, I'm not doing fire risk assessments, I'm not doing designs, but to see the different CPDs what are out there and available, it's helped my understanding of the sector. We do our own training courses, but on the British standards and on the detection, what we supply into the market, what products are available, how RadioLink works and things like that. But understanding the customer and what they need to understand has been really useful for me. So I've found the CPD sort of circulars really, really useful to understand them a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it is about understanding the whole picture, really. You know, for social housing landlords, if you're a fire risk assessor, understanding it from our viewpoint as auditors, For us, understanding the viewpoint of, you know, business owners, homeowners, understanding all of that, being aware of the holistic picture of fire safety. It isn't just our little nucleus, is it? It's, you know, a big wide world out there, and we need to all be looking at the whole picture.
It's sharing the benefit of your experience as well.
Yeah.
I think from, like, you know, Kevin's perspective, you've been in the service nearly 30 years. It'd be great if you could just express all your experience going into fires, no doubt, when you were in operations and you're actually, you know, you were dealing with real life situations, that you could share that experience with the people who aren't interested in fire safety, who don't want to fit smoke alarms. You know, the benefit of your experience in that would be invaluable. It's how do we get that message out further into, you know, into the occupants, to the residents of properties?
Yeah, I think that we need to work a bit more on community engagement. I mean, the CPD that Lucy does is about sharing experience with other fire safety professionals, but I think there's more work that we can do with community engagement. Our fire service is Primary Authority Partner Fire Service, and we work with some local housing associations for the southeast of England as Primary Authority Partners, and we give advice to them about, you know, how they keep their residents safe. But I think that, you know, I think there's work to be done nationally with community engagement and understanding fire safety. Yeah. You know,
I think we've all got a part to play in that as well.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, we supply generally into distribution for the general market for domestic smoke alarms. Our biggest customer is social housing. We've never spent enough time, I don't think, engaging with the fire rescue service, because in terms of the frameworks and how the business operates, we weren't supplying direct into the fire service. So I don't think there were ever that pull to communicate enough with them, and it's probably something we should have done a lot more of, irrespective of, you know, where the business is. I think we've got a responsibility to help this industry as much as possible and help people stay safe, if I'm honest. This has just been, you know, the recent framework and what we're doing in that's the catalyst for a lot of communications we're going to have with fire rescue service, but I think we could just do a lot more in terms of helping that resident engagement and giving the residents a voice as well. I think taking ownership of your own safety is one thing, but you know, we want them to be part of sharing that knowledge as well. I think we need to do more to try and get them involved in sharing information and sharing sort of life safety, real life issues. So as a manager, Kevin, what challenges does your department face?
Obviously we have quite limited resources, so we need to prioritise the premises that we visit to make sure that the ones that are the most high risk are the ones that we look at the most closely. So our service runs a risk-based inspection programme, RBIP. We use fire statistics locally, regionally and nationally to determine the premises that we consider would be the highest risk over the next 12 months, and those are the premises that we'll prioritise looking at. So care homes quite often, this year care homes, religious buildings, because at the moment a lot of religious buildings are being used as hostels and not always with proper consideration for people sleeping there. So yeah, we have to prioritise limited resources.
It's interesting. I'm guessing maybe during this last year, the way properties are being used and everything else has probably changed quite dramatically. So
absolutely,
have you had to account for that within the risk, or?
We are looking at that for businesses reopening. Actually, there have been some relaxations in the regulations for outdoor structures, so that businesses can start to operate, licensed premises for instance, can start to operate with outside structures that will keep people dry. So we are starting to work towards that now for those businesses reopening at the beginning of April.
It's strange how things are going to change over the next year, I think, just to try and drive business moving forward. I think we just need to make sure people are safe.
Absolutely.
You know, particularly from fire situations now. We don't want any more sort of tragedies out there just because we want to get businesses up and running. No, I understand that. External professionals get in touch with you to get onto that circulation list.
Okay, well there is a dedicated email address which will be on the bottom of this screen, hopefully. And you know, if you email that address, we will add you to the circulation list, and you can unsubscribe at any time that you want to. Something else I would ask as well is if anyone that does subscribe to that or would like to send anything in to be shared within the CPD email, we can't endorse or validate any CPD because this is an addition to our normal role and obviously resources, but we'd be very happy to take a look and share that as well, which will support us. It is about the whole industry, you know, pulling together and helping everybody get it right. So
no, the sharing. I mean, we've got our own sort of values within the company, and one of the key values we ascribe to really is sharing the genius. It's really important that, you know, that experience is passed on to new people to the business, to people not necessarily in the same side of the business as we are. I mean, when you know, we need to learn from one another across departments.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But from your perspective, like you say, you don't need to endorse a CPD effectively, because some people should be third-party accredited to be able to provide CPDs. So the work's been done on that respect anyway. I think it's great the work you're doing, pulling all this together, because they seem to be getting bigger as well. I think because of, you know, people have been spending a lot more time at home. There's been a demand on sort of online content anyway. So I'm guessing the volume what you're getting shared through has been...
Yes, and you know, I spoke earlier about the competency framework for us as fire safety auditors. There's now a competency framework for fire risk assessors, which is along a similar vein of a minimum, I think it is, of 25 hours a year. But that is, again, as I said earlier, a minimum. It is about everybody maintaining that competence, understanding the role that they're doing and the importance of it and getting it right.
So beyond the CPDs and that sharing of information, you've also mentioned before about Fred Talk Live. Do you want to expand on that?
Yes, so we in Hertfordshire recently, running throughout half of February and all of March, had a seminar running for, primarily it was aimed at fire risk assessors, but for anyone in the fire safety industry it would be useful to view. It was 5 hours accredited CPD, however, whilst that has finished now, it will be available to view on fredtalklive.com.
We'll put that website up as well.
So if we put that website up, that would be great. It was a very well-received seminar that we've done. It was the first one we've done in Hertfordshire. It was supposed to be a small event for approximately 70 fire risk assessors. COVID unfortunately meant that it couldn't be a live event, so we went online with it, and it has generally been very well received. Yes. I think that's fair to say.
Very nearly 700 people that logged in and watched a 6-hour webinar, so it's been, you know,
there's
quite
obviously
well looked at.
there's a huge appetite for it then, if people, you know, that number of people are coming, and it just shows, you know, that the knowledge base is such that that information is needed. It's getting it out to the masses, and in this instance, obviously people being working from home and being stuck in the house, not being able to go anywhere anyway, they've not had that distraction to take them away from actually sitting through this. But you know, I mean, it suggests that you may want to do some more. I mean, if that being the case.
We've got plans to continue with this, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some more in the pipeline. Watch this space.
Yeah.
Bring them here. Let's do it. We'll do it in the studio.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And with the talks, I think we had 5 talks altogether, so you'll be able to watch them individually. So you don't need to sit for 5 hours through it. You can watch and pause to your heart's content to fit in with your own.
I'm sure people will be using that for sure. But like I said, we'll get the website up on
that'd be brilliant,
so people can get onto that as well. You know, the more the merrier, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why would you not? So yeah, I think it's really important, you know, right across all businesses basically, that, you know, CPDs becomes a big part of their continuous professional development effectively, but never more so with fire risk assessors. I think they were there were a gap in what that framework was and what that competency level should be.
Yep.
And now you've got something there for them to
there
work
is a competency framework out there, and I think it's really important that fire risk assessors are competent in what they're doing, are aware of what they're doing, only take on premises that are a level of their ability. There are different levels. I'm fairly new into the fire service in the grand scheme of a lot of my colleagues. It is about being aware of what you can do, and for fire risk assessors it can be quite an isolating environment, especially if you're a small independent fire risk assessor. Getting together in a consortium with other independent fire risk assessors, looking at each other's work, doing peer assessments of each other's work, becoming registered with
It sounds a really perfect way of working, to be honest. I mean, there's a lot of industries out there, they're all in competition. They're all in competition for the same amount of work, but this is life safety, and I think sharing knowledge amongst your competitors, it can only help raise the standards within the sector.
Absolutely. And we want people out there that are doing these fire risk assessments and they're doing a good job and a thorough job. And are not afraid to ask those questions. Us as a fire protection department, I think Kevin would agree with me, we're happy for people to approach us, and for us, we might not always know the answers, but we can signpost you in the right direction, and that's what's important. It is about us all pulling together in the same direction to make sure that we don't have another Grenfell. Nobody wants to see that again.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's we've done a lot of work with social housing. Again, as I mentioned, as part of that, they use consultants, outside consultants, and in many cases, the work's to a high standard. But we do occasionally see, standards being referenced which are 10 years, 15 years out of date, and you must see a few sort of cut and paste scenarios within sort of fire risk assessments. Have you come across any yourself, Kevin?
Absolutely, over the years. We see fire risk assessments where they've got the wrong address, the right name of the premises and the right postcode, but the address is wrong. They have the wrong British standards on. Some of them even refer to the Fire Precautions Act, which, as you well know, hasn't been around since 2005. So, yeah, there is a mix of quality of risk assessments.
And the more they work together, I'm guessing they'll bring each other's standards up as well.
Absolutely.
Which is what we want. And
yeah.
It's anything we can do as a supplier to the industry as well, in terms of promoting this best practice. The CPD, what you're sending out now, for us to share that around. I mean, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And we're quite happy. I know that we send a CPD email out probably to about 350 recipients at the moment, but I know that is forwarded on by many individuals, many companies, and we're quite happy for that to happen. This is about sharing good practice and sharing knowledge and developing that knowledge and experience, because we we just want everybody to be doing a good job.
Yeah. No, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who, now looking at this and thinking, we're sharing content every day, or we're sending content out. I never even knew about this. So I'm sure you'll be getting quite a few emails, hopefully, at the back of this. But if it means that more knowledge is getting shared, then all the better. It might mean a bit more work for you, though, so I'll apologise in advance.
No problem.
With regards, you've said this, you're coming across some problem areas in this, but how far does it have to go before you will consider a prosecution?
So a prosecution would be a last resort for us. There are several levels of enforcement action. Usually for us, prosecution would be anybody who has willfully neglected their duty to keep people safe, and where we think that it would have been likely that people would have been seriously injured or worse in the event of a fire in their premises.
So generally speaking then, I'm guessing these are people who are just not engaging with you?
Absolutely. If it's willful neglect, or we believe that the neglect is for financial gain, then we would look at a prosecution in those cases. Yeah.
So it must be a real shame when it comes to that point, though.
Yeah, it is. It is.
How can businesses, Lucy, be sure they're seeking the support and advice from the right professionals? Is that competency framework being promoted out there?
So the competency framework is out there. Third-party accreditation, have a look and see if your fire risk assessor you're using or that they are third-party accredited. And don't just take their word for it that they're telling you they're third-party accredited. Check out those credentials. It's easy, you know, with the World Wide Web out there, you know, you can't go wrong. Check it out, make sure that they are who they say they are. Unfortunately, there are the odd person out there that will maintain that have got accreditation and experience. Just take that time to do your homework on it.
Who is responsible in those instances if the person's not?
Unfortunately, it comes down to the responsible person still. So you need to make sure you get it right. I'm sure I can speak for Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue Service and other fire and rescue services across the country that we, as a fire protection team, we all have a telephone number that you can give us a call, go onto our websites, give us a call. If you're unsure, we can't recommend anyone, but what we can do is point you in the right direction of choosing third-party accredited services to support your business.
And that's great. I think that's the half the trouble. I think with end users and business owners is lack of knowledge. You know, it's something what is, you know, it's their responsibility, and they need to think about their staff and people coming onto their premises. But I think it's just a different knowledge base entirely, and you know, I can only imagine that you stretch quite thin when it comes to how many people are within your department in terms of how many businesses are out there. If they all rang you tomorrow and I started asking you for information, it'd be quite tricky, but it's just an ongoing work, I guess.
It is ongoing work. We have a website which we're going to be developing further in the near future. We've just recently run a seminar for fire risk assessors, which is finished now, and we are looking at running future seminars. This is going to be an ongoing thing now. That's our plan, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. So the next one is going to be engaging with diverse businesses.
All right.
Because disproportionately, prosecutions by the fire service nationally, not our service, tends to be businesses that are run by people from ethnic minorities. And we recognise that, you know, we have more work to do with engaging with those communities.
I guess it's
trying to get the message
again.
across.
Yeah, it's that engagement and communication, I guess.
Yeah.
If there has been more prosecutions, but it's that lack of, being able to engage.
Yeah.
With communities as well.
Yeah.
We're well aware in terms of society, sometimes it's more difficult to engage in ethnic minority communities. So
we need to better understand what barriers there are to those businesses being able to meet the levels that are required for compliance.
Yeah, it should never be a point where you're prosecuting just because it's a communication thing.
No.
So I can understand how important that must be. It's something we keep looking at ways we can help further this sort of mission really, and help further these sort of messages as a commercial business. We do have a marketing arm. We do have a website what people are visiting on a regular basis. We should be talking to the services about what more we can do to help get that message out there.
Yep.
It's another page on a website when all said and done. And if people are visiting to look at anything else, I'm sure we can do more to help sort of spread those messages.
I think ultimately prosecution is the final thing that we will do as a service, but that is as a last resort, and we are very much about supporting businesses, advising businesses. There is Better Business for All, which is out there, so if you wanted to do a search on Better Business for All, that's a government project to support businesses in small and medium-sized businesses, I guess mainly, but supporting them in understanding the requirements that they have with enforcing agencies. So not just us as a fire and rescue service, but with trading standards, environmental health, and also on the other side of that, for us as an enforcing authority to understand the needs of businesses. That is, so it works both ways. So engaging with Better Business for All is something that we're doing very much more so in Hertfordshire now, to understand the needs of businesses and supporting them, because that is the ultimate, really, that is what we are here for.
Absolutely, we just want a safe operating businesses. We don't want to put barriers in the way for them to be, particularly coming out of COVID.
Yeah,
we don't want to put barriers in the way apart from keeping people safe, which makes makes perfect sense, I suppose. We can put that content on the on this video as well, with regards to Better Businesses. I think the more information we can get out there with something like this, the better.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt. You've obviously come down to Oswestry today to see us and to sit socially distanced in a red hot studio. You've had a look around the building. We've talked before, we talked as we walked around the building about you having the facilities available for different community groups in Shropshire. We've been offering this out for over a year now to different community groups. The same principle applies to the fire and rescue service and any other industry what may want to use these facilities. Can you see the facilities being used more as we're coming out of COVID?
Absolutely, you've got some first-class facilities here. You have a lecture theatre that looks, amazing, and you have this TV studio, which is state-of-the-art. For us in Hertfordshire, it's a bit of a travel, but you know what? I think that we will be taking you up on that offer occasionally, and I can certainly see local organisations knocking at your door quite a lot once life returns to a little bit more normal.
Absolutely, I sure hope so. Anyway, it's been a pleasure having you both down here today and talking about your roles within this, but also within that enforcement, which I think a lot of people don't understand enough of the work what you do. So it's been really useful getting to know you both and getting to know what work you're doing. And the CPD thing's fantastic. I mean, I can speak from my own experience, but I think the more people we can get that in front of, the better. So thank you very much both for coming down, and
thanks for inviting us and having us here.
Thanks for having us here, Paul. It was really a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you to Paul Cartwright and the Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue Service for that segment. We're now going to go to another quick break, and we'll see you after that.
Welcome back to Aico TV. As you can see, I'm in a 60s style living room, one of the rooms as part of Ember Place. As you can see, there's many fire hazards in this room, such as a random Guinness sock on a portable heater. We have an ashtray with fake cigarettes in. One of the many rooms used to educate children in fire safety awareness. Next, we're going to go to Dan Thomas interviewing Laura Goodhall from the MS Society. Let's see how they got on.
Good afternoon and welcome to Aico TV. We'd like to introduce Laura Goodhall from Shropshire, a Stop MS champion for the MS Society, who's here to tell us about multiple sclerosis and MS Awareness Week. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. So Laura, can you explain to us what multiple sclerosis is, please?
Yeah, so it's a complex and progressive condition of the brain and spinal cord. The immune system damages your myelin, which is a protective coating that surrounds the nerves in the nervous system, making it harder for the signals from the brain and spinal cord to get through to the rest of the body. Over time, the nerve itself can become damaged, leading to an accumulation of disability. Typically, people are diagnosed in their 20s and 30s. There's 3 times more women than men that get diagnosed with MS. And there's currently over 130,000 people that live with MS across the UK.
Okay. And Laura, you live with MS. Can you tell us a bit about your story?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed 6 years ago, age 21. It took a year to diagnose me. We're going through quite a journey with that. I got 150 blood tests, was tested for diseases in Africa and all sorts of different things. Eventually it came out from an MRI scan. But to be honest, I think my symptoms were pretty textbook. Now I know about it, my symptoms were quite textbook. I'd fall over a lot. One side was worse than the other. I'd be weak. When I was competing, as soon as I got what I know now is warm, halfway around the ring, my muscles would go, turn to jelly, and then I'd fall off and go blind, basically. But yeah, so it was quite hard. I didn't know what was going on with me. And I'd have panic attacks a lot because I didn't know what it was or what was causing it, and the stress was making it worse. Yeah, so by which point I couldn't really ride or do much, to be honest. But yeah, it was hard. It was a hard time, but we got there.
Yeah, excellent. So you're a Stop MS champion volunteer.
Yeah.
So what's the appeal about, and what does your role entail in that?
Yeah, so the appeal, the MS Society are trying to raise £100 million by 2025 to fund pioneering MS research. They'll bring effective treatments for everyone that's got MS. I myself have Tysabri, which is an infusion that I go to Stoke Hospital every 4 weeks, and that stops my white blood cells attacking my body. That's been amazing. It's changed my life. Prior to that, I was relapsing 6 times a year, each relapse lasting 6 weeks at a time. So that's most of the year gone.
Yeah.
Touch wood, since 2019, I haven't relapsed. My MS is stable now, which is really good. But the MS Society are trying to get this funding to stop MS in its tracks, basically. So far, they've secured £50 million towards this ambitious target, which is great. But they believe with this dramatic investment in research, they can slow and stop the progression of MS, and possibly even reverse some of the damage that's been caused. We recently announced a new clinical trials platform. It's called Octopus, which will test multiple drugs at one time, and if this works, so it just basically speeds up the process for testing the drugs. Traditionally, clinical trials can take 15 years. However, with this new infrastructure, we can dramatically reduce the time and new treatments and hopefully get to people in around 5 years.
That's amazing.
So as a Stop MS champion, generally it's people that are affected by MS. So obviously I have MS myself, and people that believe in stopping MS for good, which is obviously I'm one of them.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we're tasked for raising awareness, so we'll just do like public appearances, meeting people, just talking about the campaign, trying to inspire others to get donating or fundraising, just to help with the charity really and help towards the Stop MS appeal.
So you're now a para-equestrian. That's awesome. So how did you get into the sport, and what success have you had, and what are your aspirations for the future in it?
So I've been show jumping since I was 13 years old. I had to give up riding during my diagnosis because obviously the stress and not knowing, and all my symptoms got too much. I was struggling to do anything, if I'm honest. I got to the stage where I was walking on a horse and still falling off, so my balance had got that bad. It was getting too dangerous, so I had to give up. Once we'd sort of got on top of my MS, and I gave my head a wobble, to be honest. I said, I need to get back, get doing this. I retrained myself to ride again, and then I eventually got show jumping again with what I call my new body, which wasn't a great new body. So yeah, I've got left side weaknesses, so everything on my left, half the time I can't feel it. which makes things quite difficult. So I got back show jumping, and then the end of 2018 I got classified as a para show jumper. And then 2019 it was my first year para show jumping, and I was very fortunate to have been selected to represent Great Britain for para show jumping in Germany. So off we went, which was quite nerve-wracking, to be honest. I had a lot of people behind me and I felt a lot of pressure, especially because I never know when anything's going to go wrong. So I can be absolutely fine, and then the next minute my muscles have gone and I'm on the floor. So it's the lack of control that gets me the most with my nerves and things. But yeah, it went really well. We were really lucky. We'd got the horse and myself in top form, really, and just prayed that my MS would play ball, which it did. So come back with an individual gold and silver for Great Britain.
Oh,
which
congratulations,
was really
that's fantastic.
Thank you very much. But yeah, horses have played a massive part of my life. You know, I've been competing for as long as I can remember. I didn't really know life without it. So yeah, it's meant everything to be able to get back doing it, to be honest. My journey has changed slightly, but it's just changed paths. So I can now focus on something a little bit different, but I'm still doing it. So
Brilliant.
that's good.
So you're here because it's MS Awareness Week. Can you tell us a bit about the campaign?
Yeah, so the MS Awareness Week in 2021 is running from the 19th to the 25th of April. It's a chance to raise awareness for MS and spread the word using the hashtag Let's Talk MS. MS can be tough. It's quite a hard journey, and for many people it can be particularly challenging. Whether you're opening up to a friend after being newly diagnosed or finding the right words to tell an employer, sometimes people find it easier not to say anything at all. I know myself, when I was first diagnosed, I was in denial, and I wouldn't tell anyone I had MS. I'd just hide it, and I just found it easier to just ignore it, to be honest. I'd pretend there was nothing wrong with me, and I'd almost make out that, I'm just being lazy today, on a day that I'm struggling. But bottling up your emotions makes everything so much harder, and when people know, they can obviously help and be more understanding towards things. I think sometimes with MS, because it can be an invisible disability, people can look at you and say there's nothing wrong. It's a hard one to come across, and it almost makes you feel like you're making things up because people can't see what you're trying to explain. So yeah, I personally didn't tell my employer. I didn't tell most people, and I would just pretend I was fine, which it's hard. So I think, opening up has made it so much easier for me. My symptoms were so much worse because I was living a double life. There was the Laura everyone knew, and then there was the MS Laura that was struggling but didn't tell anyone, and it just gets you in a dark place. So the Awareness Week is just literally to try and get people talking, spread the word about MS so more people understand it. But yeah, the MS Society has also been running a survey to explore how people with MS feel talking about the condition. And we know it's very different from person to person. Different people feel different things. But the factors like your culture, age, where you live, attitudes from friends and colleagues can all make a massive difference. Just talking about it just makes it more approachable for everyone, really.
So if people with or are affected by MS want to support the campaign or the work that the MS Society are doing, how can they get involved?
So they can raise vital awareness about the condition by sharing their experiences and their journeys using the hashtag Let's Talk MS on social media. The MS is a charity with no guaranteed government funding. Many people with MS have experienced significant challenges during the pandemic, such as worsening MS symptoms, inadequate access to health and social care, loneliness, anxiety, and in some cases, loss of mobility. Financially, as a charity, we've been hard hit through the pandemic, with a reduction of around 1/3 of our fundraising income in 2020 compared to previous years. So if anyone would like to support the charity, the amazing work, and might consider donating or organising a fundraising event or activity, or even volunteering, then it'd be great if they can contact us on myfundraising@mssociety.org.uk to explore ways of getting involved and to help.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, Laura, I just want to say thank you very much for coming in and joining us today. It's been a fantastic pleasure. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me talk about MS.
Thank you.
It was great to hear from Dan Thomas and Laura Goodall, the Paralympic show jumper, raise awareness for multiple sclerosis. A really interesting session. For those of you who'd like to support the MS Society, you can visit their website. The link is below. Now we're going to move on to our next session, which is our frequently asked questions. So we're going to join Holly in the bedroom and look at the FAQ.
Thank you, Alex, for the introduction. As you can see, I'm in the futuristic room of End the Place, and this is where we're going to round up today's episode. And that's going to be with our technical advisor, Indra, who's going to be answering today's FAQ. And she'll be discussing how to remove your Aico alarms from their base.
Make sure the green light is off. That means that the mains power is turned off. Simply insert the screwdriver into the slot, tilt it towards the floor, release the catch, and take alarm off the base plate.
It was great to hear from Indra there, telling us how to replace your alarm on your base. For anyone else looking for FAQs, please visit our website or visit our YouTube channel. Speaking of YouTube channel, we're approaching 500 subscribers to the channel, so please keep subscribing. And that's all we have time for this week. People can follow us on social media, Holly?
Yeah, they can. We have LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
So that's all we have time for this week. We hope to see you again soon.
See you next week.